Hey everybody, welcome to another FireTEK video. In this video we're going to take an in-depth look at the FireTEK controllers. Now there's two controllers available, the FTQ-99Sx and the FTQ-99Nx. There are some subtle differences between them and I've covered those in more depth in another video which you'll find a link to both in the description and in the corner of the screen right now. But for the most part the functionality of these is the same, and so I'm going to focus in this video on giving you an overview of the 99Sx. So let's move that out of the way. Where there are differences though, I will pick up on those as we go. So this is fairly lightweight, easy to hold, fiberglass just like the modules, double fiberglass on the top, single fiberglass everywhere else. The side panels, the front and the back are all interchangeable as different options become available. On the back of mine I have an antenna connection. You can get versions with two antennas for two different frequency bands, 2.4 gigahertz and 868 megahertz, the latter of which is the version that I've got. On the back as well, we've also got two USB-C ports, one marked charge, one marked data. The one for charge is for charging the internal battery in here. The one for data is for putting USB memory stick in to load scripts, sound files, and for firmware updates. There's also an audio out jack, a stereo 3.5mm jack. That's slightly different on the FTQ-99Nx, where the audio out is on a pair, a left and right pair of RCA phono jacks. There's also a power button and a time code in out RCA connector as well. So that's the back. And let's power it on. So the power button there, we turn that on, loading. There we go. We'll talk through this screen in a little bit more depth in a minute. Let's just talk through some of these buttons. So here we've got a previous and next button. They're for cycling through menus and other options on this screen. A script button for loading our script into the controller and for sending it out to the modules. R1, R2, R3 and R4 buttons. They correlate to rails. On the modules, if you've seen my module video, the 64 channel modules have 4 rails, each one 16 channels. So those correlate to R1, R2, R3 and R4 on each module. We've then got buttons here numbered 1 to 16. That obviously correlates to the 16 channels on each rail. They're also sort of sub-labeled 17, 18, 19, 20 all the way to 32. Not quite sure why, and there doesn't seem to be a reason for that. I think it's left over from old firmware versions. The newer software, the newer hardware, doesn't really make use of this 17 to 32. So I'd rather they weren't there, but anyway, they're a bit redundant. Here we've got a step jump button. So if we're manually firing a show, we can step through our cues or our channels. We've got a play, pause, auto button that starts and pauses our script. We've got a manual fire button to put this into manual fire mode. A sequence button which basically allows us to have multiple scripts running at the same time effectively. Safety zones is a really cool feature. This allows you to lock out certain modules. So if, for example, you had a show and you had some big shells with big hang times that you could only really use if the wind conditions were correct. If it turns out that just before firing time the wind changes direction or picks up and you have to take those shells out of your show, you can disable that particular module with safety zones. The shortcut arm button is used to arm the system, put it into arm mode. At the moment it's in test mode. To put it into arm mode you push and hold that. That's slightly different from the FTQ-NX unit where there's actually a key switch to put it into armed state. This you have to push and hold a button to take it in and out of armed. There's an audio player button to access the audio menu and a settings button. So let's look at the screen itself in a bit more detail. So along the top here we've got an indicator of our wireless noise level on this particular channel. There is a little bug here, a bit like in the modules. So where it says 1, 2, it actually means 1, 2, 8. It's chopped the 8 off. Basically the higher the number there, the better. It's a minus number in terms of decibels. So the bigger the minus number, if that makes sense, the less noise there is on that channel. But 12 indicates 128, not 12. Next to it is the battery level of this remote. If I have GPS, there's a GPS option available for these. If I have GPS, which I don't on this one, you get a little satellite icon next to that, which I think actually I can show you on the other one. Let's just turn this off a second. Let's power up the 99NQ and let this load up. So this one does have GPS in it. So if I show you this, it takes a few seconds to find it, but you can see actually I've got two signal noise levels there. That's for the 2 bands. This has 2 bands on it. You can get the 2-band option on here. This one's got 2 bands, so it's 2.4 gigahertz and 868 megahertz. This one here is just 868, but I could get it with the 2.4 gigahertz option as well, dual band. So that's showing me the signal strength there. Again, I've not got the antenna connected, so it's not showing me anything. The battery level in here, and this little symbol will show me GPS. And the moment it's greyed out because it hasn't got a GPS signal just yet, we give that a minute or two and it should find a GPS signal and turn green. And there we go. After a couple of minutes, we can see that it's now turned green for the GPS. And so this time display here is locked into GPS. What's the benefit of the GPS options in FireTEK? Well, it makes the firing even more accurate. I think it's 10 milliseconds firing accuracy without GPS, and that goes down to 10 nanoseconds with GPS. So if you're doing a show spread over a few miles, maybe along a river or something like that, where you've got firing sites really far apart, but you want everything to be synced together as accurately and as closely as possible, then you can get either the 99NX or the 99Sx with a GPS option. Okay, so let's go back to our 99Sx. So next we have on the display TCXX, that means time code. It's XX because it's not sending or receiving time code at the moment. There's nothing connected. If I connect time code in or out to that, that will change. Next to it is the time. There's no GPS in here, so I've manually set the time, but it syncs that time to all the modules as well. If you've got the option with GPS, obviously the time is synced to GPS. Next here, we've got a little icon that says ID with a red X, that's the internal drive. Sometimes that will show UD for external drive, and you'll see that when we put a memory stick in a little while. Beneath that, it says test. We're in test mode. Everything's green, so everything's okay. This little icon here will give us warnings if there's a problem with the wireless connection with any of the modules. Below will show us if there's an issue with the battery level on any of the modules. So if the battery level goes below, I think it's about 10% on any of the modules, we'll get a warning here so we can see that on the controller. Here, this one that says SC, that kind of also looks a little bit like a satellite. It's not, it means script and connected. If we've got more things connected that are in our script, or less things connected that should be in our script, we'll get warnings here. So at the moment there's no script loaded, so everything's okay. And below that, it will show us if there are any other warnings or issues to be concerned with. At the moment it says module 0, there's no modules online. All tests are okay. And below this is a grid of all the different modules. So it shows 1 to 48 here. So if I get a module, let me grab a module here. So here's module 1. I'm going to turn module 1 on, and in a few seconds you should see on the screen here. Just got to give it a few seconds to boot up. There we go, and we should see. There we go. It's now saying modules on line 1, and it's green there to show that module's there. So module 01 is showing me 64 to saying this is a 64 channel module. You can actually get, there's a new 16 channel module available, which hopefully I'll get my hands on to be able to show you guys in more depth. And which case, if you connect that up, that will show 16. But this is showing 64 to say I've got one module online with 64 channels. If I get a second module online, let's get another one here and let's power this one up. So we've got a couple of modules now. We'll let that one boot up as well, and then in a few seconds on here it should show us, there we go, module 2. So I have done a more in-depth video on the modules itself in terms of how to address them, change the module numbers and things like that, but at the moment you can see I've got 2 modules online. There's no script loaded, so everything's still showing green. If I press next, it will then show me the status of module 1. So at the moment it's saying there's no rails connected. So if I connect a rail, I've got a rail here, and I've put some igniters in channels 1, 3 and 4. If I plug this into module 1, within a matter of seconds, there we go, it's detected there's a rail, and it's detected that there's an igniter on channels 1, 3 and 4. If I press next, it will show me the current status of module 2. Again, nothing connected. If I go next again, it goes back to that screen. So I can cycle through all my connected modules and see what I've got connected. So let's connect another rail. This rail's just got an igniter on channel 2, but I'm going to plug this into the second module, and then let's just scroll through these again. So we go next, there's the status of module 1. Also, it will show me the signal at level of module 1 and the battery level of module 1. If I've got the 2.4 gigahertz option as well, it will show me the signal strength there. So let's go next, and that's module 02. And we can see we've got one igniter connected there. And again, the battery level. So let's load a script then. So your script has to be a CSV file. We'll cover scripting in another video. It needs to be on a USB memory stick, a USB-C, and it needs to be FAT32 formatted and no greater than 32 gigabytes. So if you have a 64 gigabyte, 128 gigabyte, whatever, it won't work. It has to be a maximum 32 gigabytes and it has to be formatted FAT32. And the file has to be called script.csv. Quite a lot of things to remember. But we put it into our data port, not our charge port, obviously. Data, like that. And it will detect it. And here's the details of our script. So my script is called example. There are 4 pyro events in it, no DMX events. It uses 2 modules. There's no sequences and no safety zones. So I then have the option to upload it to each individual module at a time or to all modules at once. So if I wanted to upload it to module 1, I can press R1. I want to upload it to all of them, so I'm going to press R2 for all. It then uploads that script to both these modules. Upload complete without errors, modules 2, events 4. So let's come out of that. So it's checked the status and everything's okay. So that means the igniters I've got connected match the script. If I was to change one of these igniters, let's put that there so we can still see it. Let's change this igniter over from 2 to 1. You'll now see instantly this has now changed to an error, and it's showing there's a mismatch between what I've got scripted and what I've got connected. So I can view those errors. There we go. So it's showing a question mark. It's something it doesn't know about is in channel 1, and something that should be connected isn't in channel 2. So if I swap that over, put that back, you'll see within a matter of seconds, all tests okay. So it's checked the script, it's checked the igniters, and everything matches there. So how do we fire this show? Basically this show is 4 channels. It's going to fire 1 on here, 2, 3, 4. So 1 on here, 2, 3, 4 at 1 second intervals. So to do that, let's just point that away from me. I don't want that firing into my face for obvious reasons. Right, so to arm, I push and hold shortcuts or the arm button for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This beeps, the modules beep to tell me that it's armed. And you'll see the colour has changed to orange to show that it's armed as well. So this screen is a little bit different now. I've still got my module display here. It's saying ready to fire. It's showing I've got 4 pyrotechnic events. My duration of my script lasts 4 seconds, which is that figure there. And it's 1 second to the first ignition. So when I press start, it's going to be 1 second before anything fires. So that will always show me the countdown to the next cue. So I'm just going to point these away a little bit more as well. There we go. So let's fire this show. So to fire it, all I do is press this flashing auto button. So I'll press it and then I'm going to leave it here, in fact, press it, and then you guys can see what's going to happen. See if I can tilt that up a bit so you guys can see it. So here we go, 3, 2, 1. There we go. Our 4 things all fired as expected. One little niggle is even when it's finished playing the script, it will carry on playing. That's because if you've got an audio file on here, your audio file may continue after your show. So to stop this playing, we need to press pause. And then to come out of arm mode, we push and hold the arm shortcut button again. And there we go, we are out of armed mode. You'll see now as well, there's loads of errors because obviously these igniters have now fired. So if I go through and view this, you'll see there's no igniters on any of those channels that there should be. So that's how to automatically fire a show. If you want to manually fire, let me get another igniter and let's have a look at that. Okay, so I've put a new igniter into 6 on rail 1 on module 2. So to go into manual fire, I have to arm my system again. So we push and hold to arm. We then press MF, manual fire, and this will then show me the status of all my rails and all my modules. So this is module 1, nothing connected at the moment to that. Module 2, it's showing me something there. So to fire that, I select rail 1 because it's rail 1. And then all I would do is press, it's on number 6, so I would press the 6 button. So let's do this after 3, 2, 1. And there we go, that's how we manually fire channels on the FireTEK controller. The playback of audio we'll look at in another video. I will show you some of the settings though on this, so let's just come out of armed mode. So we push and hold that. So let's go into settings. On the settings screen, we can control the time. So if I press R1, I can set the time zone, I can set the current time, I can set a start time. So I can set the show, the script to start at a specific time. So for example, if you're doing New Year's Eve fireworks and you want to start at the stroke of midnight, you could set that up here. Timecode settings as well, you can change the timecode settings, so you can have it say in SMPTE or FSKPD, FSKF1, out SMPTE 25, 30. So there's the whole range of different in and out options for timecode if you need to use it. Let's go back to the menu. So that was R1. R2 is the wireless menu. From here, I can change the wireless channel that this system works on. So if you're doing a display and there's multiple companies and they're all using FireTEK, obviously you want your module 1 to be different to their module 1. So you can set your own wireless key on here so it's unique to your system, and you can then transmit that to all the modules. You can also save the wireless key onto a USB stick and then manually load that into your modules as well. So that's the security menu. And then we've got LCD buzzers, others on R3. We can change the brightness of the LCD backlight. We can disable the buzzer. Now the buzzer is when we put this into arm mode and when we fire channels and things. So that's a useful one to perhaps have. Power is a really useful one. I can remotely power off modules in the field, which is so useful at the end of a show. Rather than having to go round and power everything off individually, you can do everything manually from here. So we'll look at that in a minute. And R4 is the language. We can change the interface language. Obviously I've got it running in English. So if I go to power, one of the things I can do is I can disable the power button so they can't be inadvertently turned off. I can put the modules to sleep and I can power off the modules. Putting the modules to sleep is a really great thing to do. If you've got a big site and you're setting up in the daytime and you're not firing for several hours, once you've set everything up, rather than turning all the modules off so you then have to go around and power them up, you can just put them into sleep for a period of time you select, and then at those intervals it will automatically wake up, check if there's a connection, and then go back to sleep again. So it extends the battery life. It means you don't have to turn everything off once you've set it all up. You don't need to have to turn it on again. You can just put it to sleep. So depending on how long you sleep the modules for, you can make the batteries on these last apparently up to about 3 weeks. It's something I'll test in a future video, I'm sure. But it's a useful feature. For now though, I want to show you how to power off the modules remotely. So that's R2. So if I push and hold R2, you can see these modules are currently on. Hopefully you can see these modules are currently on. I'm going to push and hold R2. And you'll see it's powered off both those modules. So you can't remotely power them on unless you use the sleep function, but the power off function is really useful at the end of your show to just turn everything off on the site really quickly. So that's the settings menu. The other two we'll talk about a little bit, the safety zones. In the script you can set up safety zones, as I previously mentioned, so you can sort of disable certain modules. So this screen will allow you to disable certain modules. You can also completely disable Pyro with R1 or completely disable DMX with R2. So if you want to quickly stop your show, that's another way to do it. Or if you just want to take the Pyro out and keep the DMX running or vice versa, you can do it via safety zones. Sequence, again, there's no sequences in my script, but this allows you to define multiple sequences within the same script, which you can then trigger manually during your show. So that's a bit of an in-depth overview of the FTQ-99Sx controller and also the FTQ-99Nx controller. I say I did do a video on the differences between these, but the screen and the functionality of these buttons is the same on both. So I hope you've enjoyed that video and that's been useful. And if you want to find out more about FireTEK, check out some more of my videos online.